This is Joan Armatrading celebrating 20 years of Retrospective with John Broughton on 3SER KC Radio.
Down to the ground, down to the ground. Down to the ground, down to the ground.
Growing up, was there anyone in your family that influenced you towards music?
Not really. I started because my mother bought a piano and put it in the front room. That's a story that people have heard over the years. I usually say I started writing round about when I was 14, which is about right. It might have been a little bit before that. And she just thought the piano was a good piece of furniture and put it in the sitting room. And I was just looking at it and decided to start messing about. So I started writing the little tunes and putting the words to them, and that's sort of how it started. And then my father used to play the guitar, but sort of in secret, and also used to hide his guitar in this, what we call the cellar, but it was at the side of the house, which are great big iron sort of safe doors, you know, the big bank vault doors.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And as a little person trying to open one of those, it was impossible. So he used to hide his guitar in there, up on a top shelf, which meant, of course, I couldn't get hold of it. So then I saw in a pawn shop a guitar for £3, and I asked my mum if I could have that. And she said no, we didn't have the money, but if the woman would take these 2 prams that she had and swap them, then I could have the guitar, and that's how I got my first guitar, which I still have. But it was really just because of my mum putting the piano in there that started me off. I didn't buy records and didn't go to gigs and wasn't a fan of anybody's and didn't have pictures of pop stars up in my desk at school and stuff like that.
What do you remember most about some of your early songwriting efforts?
Well, just very enjoyable, really. I mean, it was just a really nice experience. I remember sitting in one of the rooms with my legs dangling outside the window, serenaded the mechanics of the across the road. That was just you know, it's just a very natural sort of thing, really.
I believe you toured with the English production of Hair. What did you take from that experience in terms of learning stagecraft?
How that came about, and I would say I'm probably the only person in Hair, or certainly one of the only people in Hair that's never taken their clothes off. But it was a great experience, and I was also in the same company with Richard O'Brien and Paul Nicholas. So that's really nice to sort of, you know, seen us all achieve different things along the way. But it was just a very friendly time, obviously, but sort of different for me as well, because I was pretty quiet then. So even then, although I was friends with everybody, I was pretty much on my own, and could just enjoy the experience of being on stage, jumping around with a load of people. And because there were a whole load of people, it didn't feel so frightening, if you like.
Tell us a bit about Pam Nestor, the lady you collaborated with on your first album.
Well, as I say, I've been writing songs since I was about 14, and Pam, we met in Hair, and she came to me one day and said, I've written some lyrics and I know you write songs, can you put some music to one of these lyrics that I'd written? And I said yes, and I did, and then she came and asked if I'd do another one, and I said yes, and so that's how that happened. In the meantime, I just carried on writing as I had been, and then so that's why the first album has most of the lyrics, not all, most of the lyrics written by Pam, and that was a really nice time. She was a very fun person to be with, had a great sense of humour, but I was used to writing on my own, and just continued writing on my own after that first album. And Pam went off and did the things that she wanted to do.
Were there any guitar players in particular that influenced your style, particularly the percussive nature of your acoustic playing?
Not at the time of starting. I think probably that's why my style of playing is the way it is, because I didn't have an influence as such. All I was trying to do was play everything, because I knew, when you had a song, you heard the bass, and you heard the rhythm, and you heard the lead, and you heard the melody. So I was just trying to do all of those things, and I think that's why my style evolved. There's loads of guitarists that I certainly admire and started to admire over the years, but I wouldn't say there wasn't an initial influence of any guitarist or singer or writer or anything like that, because it was just, as I say, the thing that started me off was my mom having the piano there, and I just started to mess about. And I didn't do the sort of looking in the mirror and all that sort of stuff. But over the years, then I started to listen to different guitarists. But I think even at that point of starting to be really aware, my style was my style anyway. But I loved like Leslie West, who was in Mountain, and absolutely loved Muddy Waters' guitar style. And these days, absolutely love Mark Knopfler. I think he's definitely one of the best guitarists around. Johnny Marr, I think, has a great style. There's just loads of really, really good guitarists, to name. Stevie Ray Vaughan, fantastic.
From your very first album onwards, one thing I've always admired about your music is the diversity of musical styles. Is that important to you to cross over musical styles through your albums? Do you consciously work for that, or is that something you like as a listener to music yourself?
It's, believe it or not, I don't really listen to a lot of music. But I don't consciously try and write. I don't say, today I've written the blues, tomorrow I must write some sort of a rock and roll thing. The song itself generally dictates what's going to be written and how it's going to sound and the style of it. I do like writing different styles. I really enjoy that. But I don't have a conscious sort of, whatever I'm trying to say about it, I don't consciously go for any particular style. It's just the song.
Just the way they pan out.
Yeah. The way they pan out, right.
Do you think that variation in styles sometimes has perhaps worked against you in terms of picking up new fans who more or less like to know what to expect from each artist's record?
I haven't got a clue. You'll have to ask the people who listen to my music and who enjoy it. I don't really know.
At what point in what album do you think you really began to develop a self-confidence and surety in your songwriting?
I'd say I'd always had it.
Yeah.
I think right from starting to write, if I'm not confident in anything else, I'm very confident in my songwriting.
Yeah. You've been known over the years also, particularly in your early years, to change producers quite regularly. Did you feel at the time that certain songs required a certain touch that only a certain producer could offer?
I think it's more really enjoying working with different people. Because I work in isolation most of the time, it's fantastic to work with different musicians. And I've been very lucky over the years to have worked with the best musicians that there are. And the same goes for producers. It's great to work with different producers and have, at that point of working with a producer, having that influence and having somebody else look at what I'm doing and making suggestions and at the same time keeping within the boundaries that I have. And I wouldn't miss working with Glyn Johns. I wouldn't miss working with Steve Lillywhite or David Tickle. It's really, really nice to have those very talented people working and wanting to work with me. You know, it's very complimentary on, you know, to have people say, well, I admire what you're doing and it would be great to work with you.
How much did working with a variety of producers help you in later years when you started taking on production for yourself?
Well, I think in the end everything helps, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just being alive helps. I mean, you know, when you're looking at certainly when you're becoming more conscious and you're looking at everything becomes an influence. Everything has an influence, even if it's the influence of saying that's not how you should do it. It is an influence. So that's sort of the answer, really.
Now that you have some production experience behind you yourself, do you ever look back on your old albums and ponder how perhaps you may have done things differently had you self-produced those as well?
No, I don't tend to do that. I've enjoyed, probably with the exception of one person, I've enjoyed working with everybody that I've worked with, and I think what we produced at the time, you have to remain in the time, I think, at the time was right and one was very, very good and worked very well. I think when I write something and it's at the point of me saying to myself, this is the finished song, there's nothing else for me to do, because you have to get to that point, otherwise you'd be writing one song for 20, however many years. Once you get to that point, then and you put it on the record, then you have to say, it's at this point I'm really satisfied. As soon as you've made that record, or talking for myself, as soon as I've made that record, I then start to think about that record, about what I could do to make the song better. Mm-hmm. But I don't think, well, it's somebody else's fault that this particular thing hasn't worked very well, or it's my fault because this particular thing hasn't worked very well. It's just that once you've made the record and then you've got hindsight and then you've got time to sort of get away from it, then you can sort of see some of the things that you could have done better. But it's not a regret thing. It's just a sort of a listening, developing thing rather than you know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Talk about your songwriting. Have you found yourself tackling the songwriting process any differently these days to in the past?
Not really. No, I think what I think about when I'm writing a song is there a beginning, a middle, and an end? And I think that's it really. And it's stayed as a sort of an organic thing. It's just a natural thing again. It's whatever flows out. I don't try and analyze what I'm doing or analyze how it should be, or I don't try and do it by numbers or whatever. It's a pure feel thing. So however it feels, whatever the emotional thing is of it, that's how it is.
Is it something that gets easier with experience for you? Do you still go through songwriter's block?
No, I don't have songwriter's block. I have times of writing very bad songs, but I don't ever have a time that I can't write a song. The experience of writing songs doesn't change. Some songs are incredibly easy, and that hasn't changed over the years. And some songs are incredibly difficult and take a long, long time. And some songs it's as if you're writing something that you're sort of singing something that you know already. Some songs you have to sort of agonize over a bit. Some songs you write and think, well, I'd like to give up on this, but I generally don't. That doesn't change. That, again, it's just down to the song. The song will be whatever it'll be.
Do you tinker around a lot in terms of editing? Are you a pretty strong editor, or do you pretty much go for the original result?
Well, you do have to edit. You can't just go for the first thing that sort of you think of or you sing or anything. You have to edit to make it work. But you have to know when to stop editing. I think it's that same sort of question, really.
You had a very strong period of commercial success there in the early mid-'80s. How do you look back on that time now?
Fine.
You you were quite comfortable playing the rock star game?
Well, I didn't really.
No.
I just.
Yeah, you don't strike me as one that.
I just wrote my songs, sang them, and went on tour, and was very happy that people enjoyed what I was doing and came to see me, and still do. I'm happy to say. It was very nice.
What about America? How's your relationship been with American audiences, and how important has success in that market been to you?
Well, it's all been very good. I've really got no complaints about any of it, really. It's all been really good. The American audiences are fantastic. I'm just about to go on tour there in July for a few weeks. No, it's all been great.
In recent times, there's been a bit of an upsurge of interest in women singer-songwriters, and a lot of new ones coming through. Have there been any that have caught your attention?
But there's a lot of different artists that I really like. I mean, I can't always be specific about women artists, but let me see, who do I like at the minute? Well, the Cause are very good.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Cause. I like a lot of things, though. It's hard to sort of rattle off a reel of names. I still like Supergrass, even though they're maybe not as current as a couple of years ago, but still really like Supergrass. Desiree's very good. Trying to think of.
I'll put you on the spot, haven't I?
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, which caught my attention, is a recent project you've been involved with, Lullabies with a Difference.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, that's a charity for children with cerebral palsy, and they just wrote to me out of the blue. I had never heard of them before, although I had heard of conductive education, which is a form of method of teaching the children to be more mobile, and it was developed at the Peto Institute in Budapest. And I'd heard of that particular method of teaching the children since the early 80s. Anyway, they approached me and asked if I would do a CD for them. And I said yes, because it just sounded very interesting, and then meeting the people, and then obviously meeting the children, sort of got me totally hooked and involved. And I've become very, very involved with them now. And so I asked different artists if they'd give me a song in the style of a lullaby. I didn't want to do traditional lullabies. So I asked different artists like Melissa Etheridge and Brian May, Mark Knopfler, the Cranberries, Lewis Taylor, and just try and see some of the Jules Holland, Tina Turner, Paul Young, Midge-Ure, myself obviously, and a young girl called Sarah Randall. I asked her to sing one of my songs, Willow. And just put the record together and put it out. It's a really good record, and it really helps. The main aim of the album was to get the charity known.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a process that isn't just for a couple of months. It's for a while to get people to know that they're there and that they can be very helpful to families with children with cerebral palsy. For instance, in Britain, if families wanted that particular help, then obviously they'd have the expense of going to Budapest. They'd have the upheaval of leaving the rest of the family if they couldn't afford to take everybody with them. Then they'd get there and they'd have the sort of in a foreign country having to deal with a foreign language, and there's quite a lot to it. And then having the sort of the emotional part of it with their son or daughter, being with sort of people who they didn't know, you know. So that quite a lot to it, and so in Sheffield, the Paces team became the UK arm of the Budapest Institute, and have had to sort of build up so that people can get to know that they're there, and they're doing pretty well. But they need that exposure.
Yeah.
And as I say, it'll take a while. It's not because it's not a sexy charity, if you like. You know, it's not a high profile charity, so it's not something that people immediately say, well, I know them, let me help. So there's a lot of work to get them to that point.
Sure. Have you been happy so far with the response, the recognition that the album has brought?
Well, the response to the album has actually been great in terms of people wanting to get the album and how they've liked it. It's been really good, but it needs to have more exposure. Really. It needs more people to know that it's there, and more people to know about the charity.
How time-consuming was it a project for you to coordinate?
Very.
Outside of that, your own recordings, anything coming up in '99?
I'm not sure if I will do something in '99, but I would certainly think the next year. I mean, I've written quite a few songs already for an album. I just haven't got around to making the record.
Yeah.
But I will.
And you mentioned that you're about to go out on tour. Who's in your touring band these days?
Well, I'm going to do just for a change. I'm going to do an acoustic sort of thing. So it'll be bass, drums, and myself on guitar, and keyboards and percussion, but it's all acoustic rather than a big sort of electric thing. And I did a BBC Unplugged thing like that, but at that point I had another guitarist and cello and violin as well. And it sounded really good. It works very well. It's very nice. So that's the thing I'm taking to America: bass, drums, guitar, myself on guitar. I mean, keyboards and percussion and sax. The percussionist is a sax, and it's going to be really nice. I'm looking forward to it a lot. But I should mention to people that if they're interested in knowing what's happening and where the tour is going, and just general Joan information, they should go and have a look at the website, because I've got a website, and let me give you the address. It's www.joanarmatrading.com.
Easy to remember.
Easy to remember.
No problem. You've always been a regular and most welcome visitor down our way. Is anything in the works there?
So far, I haven't looked at coming to Australia. That's not to say that I'm not coming, but so far it's not in the pipeline.
Nothing planned at the moment?
No, because the last tour was 18 months, and by the end of the last tour, I really wasn't sure if I wanted to go on tour again. And I'm doing this particular tour because my agent in America just said, you know, you have to do something, because you're just getting so many requests that I've got to do something. So that's really why I'm doing the tour. And I'll do America, and then I'll do a couple of things here in Britain, and perhaps a couple of things in Europe. But I don't want to do a great big tour, really.
Yeah. Finding the touring process is perhaps losing its shine a little bit? It's just the travelling.
Well, it's not that. It's just that I've toured non-stop since my first record. I mean, non-stop. After every single record, I go on tour, and they're always very long tours. And most other artists have been very sensible. They've always had a bit of a break. You know, even if they've toured after every record, they've toured sensibly, in as much as it's been like a few months and a few months rest and things like that. Where I've just toured, made record, toured, made record. So I decided it was time to give myself a bit of a break and not not do that in quite the same way.
Fair enough too. Okay, Joan, look, just before I let you go, is there a certain style or type of album within you that you haven't tackled yet that you'd like to have a go at before your days are over?
I don't know really, because I write different styles. I've probably written quite a few different styles anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea is the answer to that.
Fair enough. Okay, Joan, look, thanks for your time. It's been a treat talking to you, and thanks for all those years of wonderful music, and we certainly hope there's many more to come.
Thanks very much, and hello to everybody in Australia. I do miss coming to Australia, I must say, because I like it very much there. And I was given the key to Sydney in '83, so that was a highlight. I should have said that before, because that was a real quite an exciting time to have that. So, thanks very much, and I'm sure I will be back in Australia.
I've certainly got great memories of all your previous tours, and we keep our fingers crossed that you'll fit us in somewhere in the near future too.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks again, Joan.
Okay,
you take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.